Hey guys, sorry I couldn't be in class today, but I'm proctoring for the HSA, so I figured I'd make you guys a little bit of a video to get you done with the construction of the tin can camera. So I've got a brand new can of Monster right here. I'm going to go ahead and cut the top off, and I know most of you have already done this stage and you're actually moving on, but I figured I would start from the very beginning just to kind of go over my thought process. Now you can use a can this size, even though most of us use the smaller tin cans, which is fine. So let me just pop this lid off and we'll get on with the construction. Okay, so remember what I said, double check to make sure there are no burrs. This camera here, this lid came off nice and clean. I don't have to worry about cutting myself, so there we go. So we're going to talk about now getting the top of the camera. Okay, so we need a top that's going to travel on and off relatively easy, and in order to do that you're going to need a square that you're going to cut into a circle roughly the size of the top. So it does not need to be perfect. It can be a little smaller. So I'm just going to kind of size it as I go. You just want something to hold down everything when we get to the next step. Okay, so that should be good. So I'm just going to get my scraps out of the way. And I'm going to just take a couple of pieces of tape. I'm going to do a couple of decent sized ones, maybe about 4 inches in length, and a smaller one. So what I want to do now is I want to take some of the poster board and I just want to wrap it around the can. Okay, I want to see how much of this stuff I need. When I get to the spot that I want, cut it off, and I'm going to take my smaller bit of tape and I'm just going to hold it all down. Okay, and I'm going to pop that off and I'm going to set the can aside. So what I want to do now is I want to make the top of the can, the part that folds over the lid. So in order to do that, you're going to need to take your pair of scissors and you're just going to want to cut these little slats. Okay, they're just little slits. You can go about halfway down. Remember, we don't want to make a camera lid that comes down towards the center. We want it to stay up towards the top part of the can here because our pinhole is going to be right about the center. So the Monster can is obviously a little bit taller, so it's going to be right about there. Yours might be a little bit larger, but it's all relative to the top of the can. So it doesn't matter if your can's a little bit taller or shorter. Okay, so there we go. I've got the slats. I'm going to pop it back on, and I'm just going to bend them over the top of the camera. Okay, just going to bend them over, and that little circle that we cut now comes into play. All right, so all it does is sits on top just like that, and it locks everything in place. And then I'm going to tape over. Okay, now this is the important part. You want to make sure your tape goes over the edge. We don't want anything popping up while we're in the middle of shooting. We don't want the lid of your camera to sort of deconstruct. So I'm gonna use it. You're not wasting tape, all right? So I'm gonna use a little bit of tape. I'm gonna go around, and why I love using the masking tape first is that I can see all of the little areas that I did or didn't get. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna cut a longer piece, and I'm just gonna go around the perimeter. So go over the top first, and then go around everything. And this second layer of masking tape is what sort of ensures that nothing underneath is going to pop out. Okay, now your lid should cling a little bit. Okay, it shouldn't be so tight that you can't get it off. But that's it right there. Now we're not done, obviously. I want to make sure this is light proof. If you take it off and you look up, I can even look through here now when I see areas of light coming through. So we need to use the light proof tape, and that is the thin electrical tape. Now a quick way to do this is to simply, just kind of go over the top. Don't really stretch this stuff, just put it down, okay? And make sure it goes over the edge a little bit. Remember, you want to go all the way over, and you're going to want to completely cover the top. So I prefer to work in a crisscross pattern. To me, you kind of get in a rhythm of like put it down and spin the can. Every time I do that, I'm pressing it down, and I'm going to do this until I can't see any masking tape. All right, so now I'm going to aim for all these little, like, off corners. Okay, I've got one here. Sometimes people like to get a little bit lazy. They see these two little spots and they figure, that's not a big deal. Now, believe me, when you get outside and you start getting this exposed to sunlight, it becomes a big deal. So I'm checking. I've got a really good edge. Everything seems to be sealed up nice. So now it's time to just go around this. Now, the thing with electrical tape is if you stretch electrical tape, sometimes it has a tendency of pulling back and shrinking. So you'll come in one day and it'll either totally crush your lid. So I try not to pull. I just sort of let the tape lay down wherever it sort of wants to, and I'm just going to tape around the entire circumference of the can, okay? And I am going to try to cover every bit of paper. This makes it so that it is waterproof, so if you ever do go outside in the rain to take a photo, which I'm not sure why you would, but if you ever wanted to do a bit of a photo experiment, you could. It'll make sure that your can is watertight. And again, adding a little bit more tape than you think you need is not a bad thing. Putting tape on a camera is not wasting it. Throwing it at your friend is. So I'm just going to bring it down without taping it to the camera body, as close to the edge of the paper as I can. Okay, so that's pretty good right there. So you can see my can, my lid comes on and off, not a big deal. Okay, so the step we're at now is actually making the pinhole. And every time I leave this around, pins go missing, so I may be making the pinhole for you, or I'll simply have you take a pin from whoever is doing the coverage for me, and I'll show you how to do that. So basically, you want to put a hole in the middle of the camera. Okay, now I like to pick a landmark. So for me, the M is probably going to be what I'm using. So I turn the can sideways and I guess. Like this is pretty close to center. If I measured it, I could probably get perfect, but I don't really care about perfection. So for me, it's this little triangle right in the M, and try not to completely crush the can. Just apply a little pressure, let the pin do its job. Believe me, it's actually working. You can kind of feel it, and eventually the pin is just going to pop right through. Okay? I give the pin a few spins just to try and smooth out the hole, and there you go. Okay, so now we need the second piece of the pinhole, which is the aperture. It's the shutter release. Okay, so I'm going to take a piece of tape, roughly 3 inches in length, about the length of your finger. Okay, and I'm going to fold it over once, and I'm going to probably fold mine over twice. Okay, so you should have a sticky bit here and a not so sticky bit here. Okay, the sticky bit goes over the pinhole. Okay, so now you've got a lid that goes on and off. You've got a pinhole with a shutter release, and notice my top does not go over my pinhole. One thing I noticed with a lot of the cameras is that people's tops are getting to be a little bit too long, and they are in fact covering the pinhole. If that is the case, it's a simple fix. You just simply take it off. You take your scissors, and I'm not going to cut this lid, but you would make an insertion, make a nice little slice. You'd fit the scissors in there, and you would just simply trim off a ring, okay? And then put it back on. Now, as for me, I don't really have to do that. I do have a couple of dents, but they're really not going to be a big deal. One was up at the top, and it looks like the one at the bottom popped out. All right, so now it is time for me to take this outside and make a photograph. Sorry. So that is what I'm going to have you guys work on today. We'll worry about making an actual photograph the next time I see you. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't be here. Everybody loves testing, except for you, when you got to go outside and make some pinhole photos. So finish this, work on your classwork, and we'll be going outside next time.